Ellen Beth Sloan was a 52-year-old from Polson, Montana. She was an independent woman who unexpectedly ran into some tax evasion charges and was actually arrested. On April 15, 2005, she and her boyfriend were seen by friends at a local casino. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. What do you fear? Heights? Flying in a plane? Spiders? Getting blood taken? That's mine. The fears each of us have are almost as unique as our DNA. Even twins or triplets or quadruplets can have a variety of things that scare them despite having the same DNA. You could say our fears make us unique, even if most of the time they are neither real nor rational. But I bet I can get all of you to agree on a fear with just some simple, seemingly harmless phrases. An environmental protection agent wants to talk to you about your land. An officer of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration wants to see your workplace. And what could be the worst? There's something wrong with your tax statement. An IRS agent would like to speak with you. Then suddenly, all of our fears are aligned. I bring this up because that third statement, that's the statement Ellen Sloan heard in early 2005, and it threw her for a loop. She had fears of going to jail. But did this fear cause her to become a missing person? Or was it something else? Was it something more than a disappearance and taxes? And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's site, charleyproject.org. Ellen Sloan was an independent woman with a variety of interests and hobbies, but she always kept her eyes on her financial well-being and the future of her children. She worked hard and lived frugally, investing her money in real estate and other safe securities. Even so, she unwittingly faced federal tax evasion charges in 2005 from putting money into an investment in Belize. She was arrested but was released on bail. She had every intention, according to the people who knew her, to assist in the case even though she knew she might face jail time. At the same time, Ellen was involved with William Golson, the son of a friend of her mother's. They had a turbulent relationship fueled by Ellen's affinity for alcohol and Golson's gambling addiction. They had dated for a year before Ellen disappeared. Law enforcement is unsure of the date, but around April 16, 2015, they believe Ellen disappeared. And the days before, she and Mr. Golson had been seen by friends at a local hangout. However, also in the time before her disappearance, Ellen had called her daughter, begging for money. The reason? Ellen's assets had been frozen due to the tax evasion charges. Ellen's daughter promised to do whatever she could, but the daughter never talked to her mother again, and Ellen was never seen after the encounter with friends on April 15th. A month after Ellen's disappearance, her truck was found across the highway from the Missoula, Montana airport. Nothing inside the truck helped investigators to figure out what happened to Ellen. The factors complicating the resolution of this case are the following: the belief that Ellen fled because of the charges brought against her, the fact that William Golson never filed a missing persons report, and that Golson also disappeared shortly after Ellen did. Ellen's family, her lawyer, and friends dismissed the idea that she ran away. The interview for this episode is with Ellen's daughter, Brianne Edwards. Unfound news. Unfound reached its highest ranking ever, at least from what I know, on the Stitcher app, number 70 in news and politics. Since I think Stitcher carries just about every single podcast in the English-speaking world, that means Unfound is 70th in the world in news. That sounds pretty cool to me. And it reached that level without me really pushing that particular app very hard. Once again, though, I just do the program. You, the listeners, make Unfound popular. Next, Unfound had its best month ever on YouTube. Over 567,000 minutes watched, and 315 new subscribers. Once again, despite me not saying a lot about YouTube, except for when I post the Unfound live shows after they're on Facebook. I believe the Thomas Brown videos drove most of those numbers, and I anticipate the YouTube viewings to remain where they are, if not rise. Finally, I'll be in Pennsylvania starting July 11th. I'll be there for a month. The shows will continue, but I really do owe my parents some ed time. Frankly, when I was in South Carolina with them, I didn't give them as much time as I should have. So, I need to make up for that now. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify. Concerning Facebook, please join us on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Unfound live show on the Unfound page. You can email the program, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. The website, unfoundpodcast.com. The website at Trib Total Media, triblive.com/news/unfound. Unfound has Patreon and PayPal accounts. Your contributions provide for many of the items guests have received so far. I cannot thank all of Unfound supporters enough. This week, I need to congratulate Nadia and Jeremiah for winning a contest we had in the Unfound podcast discussion group last Saturday. They won a couple books. Unfound merchandise, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yes, it's out. They're all on Amazon right now in both paperback and ebook form. Let's work on trying to get some great reviews for volumes 2, 3, and 4. If you've bought them, please give them a nice review. The playing cards, go to makeplayingcards.com, do a search for Unfound Podcast. Search for almost all of Unfound's cases at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. That includes the flagship t-shirt, The First Year Cases, that has a collage of everyone from Suzanne Lyle to Jennifer Wilkerson in it. Please check it out. And please mention Unfound on all true crime Facebook pages and other websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so fortunate to have on this episode of Unfound the daughter of Ellen Sloan, Brianne Edwards. Brianne, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Let's start here. What kind of mother was Ellen Sloan? And maybe a specific question, does she have any other children besides you?
My mom was a great mom, and I do have a younger brother, Jake, and it is easy to say that he and I were her world, and very present, very involved. Just, if we ever needed her, she was undoubtedly there for us. Mm-hmm. And even more than being a mom, she was so excited to be a grandma.
Mm-hmm. When you had, and you have children yourself, is that what you mean?
Yes. We lost her shortly after my oldest daughter was born.
Okay. And so you have a younger brother, Jake. How old is he? How many years younger is he than you?
Yeah, he is just 2 years younger than me.
Okay. Okay. Am I guessing that your mother, Ellen, and your father divorced, or can we talk about that? Did your father play a role in your upbringing? Did she and your dad? What happened there? If we can ask.
Sure. No. My brother and I both have a very good relationship with both of our parents, even after their divorce, and their divorce wasn't anything very traumatic for my brother and I, other than, our parents weren't getting along and they've decided to go their separate ways. We were both teenagers at the time, so, but upon their divorce, that's when my mom moved to Montana and my dad stayed in Colorado, where my brother and I were born and had grown up.
Okay. So, I'm guessing if you had any activities, your brother activities, your mother was there, cheering you on or whatever you were doing, the kind of mother she was.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because of um, family circumstances and mostly me being a teenager that thought I knew exactly what was best for myself, I actually ended up staying in Colorado with my dad and just visited my mom in the summer. But
Mm-hmm.
she made regular trips to see me in Colorado for events or prom or birthdays. And vice versa. When my brother was in Montana, he lived with my mom, and for state wrestling weekends or football games, you name it, my dad and I would travel to Montana to
Mm-hmm.
be there with him.
Okay.
So,
Cool. What was your mother worked? What did she do?
um, she she liked to do a lot of different things. My whole life, um, definitely kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit. A smart businesswoman, very wise and frugal with her money. Um, Growing up, she had an interior design store, and um, kind of had done that until she and my dad divorced, and she decided to move to Montana at that point. And once in Montana, she owned a couple different businesses, made some real estate investments, and I think because she was so frugal with her money, she, could, her jobs really she took because they were fun, because
Mm-hmm.
she enjoyed that. So whether it was working in a framing store, making custom frames for pieces of artwork, owning a video store, helping one of her good friends repair docks after an icy winter. I mean,
Huh.
that's the kind of stuff that we would find her doing, and some of those jobs lasted years, and some of them were just for a season, just so that she had something to do.
Mm-hmm. So she had made some investments that allowed her to just take jobs that she wanted to do. I mean, I'm not gonna ask if she was a millionaire or anything, but she was comfortable. She was comfortable with what she was doing in her life. She had investments and things. She didn't have much to worry about, you would say.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that.
Okay, great.
I,
Great. So, independent businesswoman, that's who Ellen Sloan was. But we do have to talk about something that could be an issue with her disappearance, and we're going to talk into maybe a little bit more of the business side. But she did struggle with drinking, didn't she?
yes, and definitely more so after my brother graduated from high school, and so then neither of us were there with her. And I would, to be honest, like it wasn't something that I necessarily recognized as a problem as a
Mm-hmm.
child or even as a teenager. Um, she just it was just kind of how it was. Like she always had a Coors Light in her hand, and I think as my brother and I grew up and were homeless and less, I think that um, demon or addiction, probably took over a little bit more. But I mean, there was definitely times that we worried about her just because addiction runs in her family, and
Mm-hmm.
without us there, kind of imagining her battling this on her own without any support system was scary. But I mean, she always assured us that you know
Mm-hmm.
she was fine and nothing had changed, and um and it wasn't really until right before we lost her that I think we both really realized maybe what a dangerous frame of mind she was in.
Okay.
So
Okay. So, would you maybe say that it might have gotten worse because a little bit of empty nest syndrome? You being gone and your younger brother maybe going on to other things after high school. Do you think that? I mean, that does happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, we know that once my brother, he actually moved back to Colorado to attend college. So we were both in Colorado, and, a lot of her friends were friends because they were the parents of my brother's friends. I mean, that's pretty normal when you have kids playing sports together and, small
Mm-hmm.
town, that's your circle. But we did hear that, she kind of cut herself off from those families after the boys graduated. And, we
Mm.
knew, like, when I would go and visit her, her friends were always at the bar.
Mm.
Polson sits on a reservation, so bars and casino or, gambling is, I mean, it's everywhere. And anytime she's like, let's go stop by and say hi to my friend, it was always at a bar. So,
Okay. Okay. To your knowledge, I mean, did it get bad enough? Did she ever get caught drinking and driving? Any DUIs, anything like that? Maybe just give the listeners an idea to your knowledge.
not to my knowledge. I mean, I I can honestly say, like, I never saw her fall down drunk, out of control. I also know that, if I was there visiting and she had been drinking, her, she, I think, was as responsible as you can be with having that lifelong addiction.
Okay. All right, let's move on to this because I know that anybody who has looked up Ellen's disappearance before this interview has found this legal situation that she got herself into, and I think it plays a prominent part in this disappearance because I think it has allowed the police to think some things maybe that aren't true. Can you? I know neither of us, I don't think, are legal, tax, or business experts, but maybe in a nutshell, can you explain what happened for her, and this court, these charges against her, assets frozen in a capsule for the layman? What exactly happened there?
Sure. So, to my knowledge, she was being charged with tax evasion, and the the bottom line of it was that she had invested money in a company that was basically operating as an offshore tax shelter. And again, that's just my layman understanding of the situation after
Mm.
talking to her attorney and the U.S. Marshal that did arrest her and kind of process her. And um, prior to finding this out, she had told me that she was investing in a company that was purchasing property in Belize. She had made a couple of trips to Belize. Um, but my mom was not one that's like, she was very frugal.
Mm.
She never complained about having to pay her taxes. She never said any, like, she wasn't like anti-government or, like, that's
Mm-hmm.
the rule. You make money, you pay taxes. That's
So she had some investments in Belize, and what? First of all, when did this happen? When did she first get wind of something was going on with the way that she had her investments set up?
it would have been early 2005 is when I think she probably figured it out, because that's when kind of the just how she was calling and the conversations we were having. It's when I noticed a definite shift in her attitude, and
Hmm.
there was a fear there that wasn't typically there. And and I found out after she disappeared that right around that time is when she was arrested and the charges were brought forth. And so those questions were answered for me
Mm-hmm.
as far as why all of a sudden she was worried about money and why she was asking to borrow money, and why there was that panic
Okay.
for her.
So this started, once again, we'll remind the listeners that she disappeared April 16th, we believe is the date, and we'll get into why that might be a little off one way or the other, but April 16th, 2005. So about 4 months before this, 3 months before this is when she found out that something was going on with her investments.
Yeah, I would say a month, maybe two, before the disappearance.
Okay, so
So
that's
I mean, it all
that
happened
close.
all right. Mhm.
Okay. And when you found out about it, maybe even after the fact, after her disappearance, I mean, did she get wind of this beforehand, or was it something along the lines that a marshal just showed up at her door one day?
And unfortunately, I don't know that.
Okay.
The conversation I had with the U.S. Marshal, my questions were obviously on, do you have any idea where she could be? And, and then he was explaining to me his involvement as best he could with an ongoing investigation. But his feedback to me was that she was being very cooperative. She was determined this because she felt she had done anything wrong. And, and it was with talking to him that I did agree to have him issue a warrant for her. And the way he put it was, there will be that many more people looking for her.
Okay.
He agreed with me in that he's like, your mom doesn't he's like, this is the most bizarre phone call. He's like, I work with people every day that would absolutely run against charges lesser than this, but your mom was very insistent that she was going to fight this, and she, was going to be cleared. And that's usually not the attitude you get from somebody that just wants to give up and run.
Right. Now, you did say that she ended up asking you, maybe other people, for money. Is that to mean that she had all of her assets frozen? Anything in her bank accounts, any investments, like in the stock market, anything, they were all frozen?
Right. Yeah, she had a money market account that was frozen, and that's where she kept the bulk of her money. Whatever money she had sent to this scam obviously was lost, and that was hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh my.
So I do think when her money market was frozen, just that panic of, it's not that she needed a lot to live on, but she didn't know how this was going to go. And I think her relationship played into feeling like she needed more money
Right.
at her disposal.
Right. And we're going to talk about that and him in a second. But I mean, how big were these charges? Let's just say she was convicted of them. Could she have spent a lot of time in jail?
I believe she was facing jail time. If I remember correctly, it was in the years, but not decades. It was definitely a very serious situation. But we did find evidence that she had already started working on refiling those tax returns. Because what happened is she invested with this company, and the company had a CPA that actually did the tax returns for all of their investors. So part of moving forward was redoing those tax returns for those years so that she could be with IRS. And and when we went through her house, we found the paperwork that she was actively working on fixing this.
Okay. Let's say she doesn't go to jail. Is there any possibility, though, that she would have had a lot of her wealth taken away or something? I mean, even if she hadn't gone to jail, would the government I don't know, repossessed it or confiscated it, or what is your idea, all these years later about that?
I mean, I believe that whatever money that she had invested in this group, um, it was fun. I'm sure, again, without knowing exactly
Mhm.
how that works, but
Okay.
I'm assuming said government organization, like crime, they take that, and so I know that those thousands of dollars were probably gone regardless. I don't know if you can even apply to have any of those assets returned, but so it was a lot. And as far as I know, she wasn't asking for that back. She was just, I think she was trying to avoid jail and clearing her name, and then just trying to move forward with what she had left.
Okay. Would you portray this as her probably being just the victim who got caught up in something? I mean, she obviously was not the mastermind of something. She wasn't scheming, but was she an unwilling pawn maybe in this? Is that how you would describe it?
Yes, that is. I think that she was somehow presented with this opportunity, if you
Mhm.
will, of being able to invest in something that would provide her a place to travel to. She loved traveling to the beach. Um, she had invested in real estate multiple times before, um, especially in years prior to um, this one.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's not like this far-fetched thing that she never invested thousands of dollars into real estate venture.
Okay.
And I do think she has a certain naive way of looking at the world and always wanting to see the good in people that um her first reaction would not be like, wait, this might be too good to be true. I just
Okay.
that goes against who she is.
And this was not something where, I mean, we know this most about like famous people, maybe musicians or athletes, that some play where they're trying to avoid taxes. They're trying to hide it here, hide it there, or just aren't paying them straight out. This was not that kind of situation.
No, I don't think it could be. I mean, she was working maybe part-time.
Hmm.
The money that she would get from buying and selling real estate, if she sold a piece of property, she was buying something else, so there's a tax reduction. And again, her definitely don't understand the Montana um, tax laws and things like that. But, I she had enough money in her accounts that to be able to pay taxes on her transactions. So it just that part of it definitely doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. One more question about this, and we're going to move on. You had an opportunity to talk to her attorney who was representing her in this, I'm guessing after she disappeared. What did her attorney say about the probability of her fleeing because of this case?
He was completely baffled. He totally agreed with my brother and I that there he said that there was such a strong possibility of her being able to walk away from this after presenting her case. And he was like, the most important thing to her was that she be able to move forward without anybody knowing. Like, she was so embarrassed by
Hmm.
this. I believe she did tell her dad, but she told her attorney and the U.S. Marshal that she did not want any of us to know. She didn't want her
Yeah.
kids to know. She didn't want her siblings to know. She wanted to do what she needed to do to get this done and over with so she could move forward. And her attorney, he kept saying that. There's nothing about any of my conversations with your mom that would make me think she was a flight risk.
Okay.
In the world that she would really be able to walk away from this relatively unscathed.
Okay. All right, let's move on to this. Having now talked about her legal situation, once again, because I know that that is a part of her story in this disappearance. If you go to Charley Project elsewhere, you're going to see that. Let's talk now about William Golson. Who is he?
William Golson was my mother's boyfriend, and I never met him. My brother did a couple times, and my brother, after the first meeting with them, said, "We have to figure out how to get mom away from him."
How did William and your mother meet? Do you know?
I know my mom was friends with his mom. So I'm assuming at the bar that they would be at together. I do know that William was very controlling. I witnessed that when she came to visit me after the birth of my first child. She would leave the room to talk to him, and he would call and text her all day long. And it, just my mom and I have always had a very open relationship, and for her to leave the room and shut the door to talk on the phone was weird.
Okay.
So.
All right, and when did maybe we should I should ask you this: when did they meet? If she disappeared April of 2005, when did they meet?
I am going to say it was probably close to a year. So probably the previous spring, because they were definitely well involved when my brother came up that summer, and then for the holidays of 2004, that's the two times that he met William. So, but again, like as open as my mom and I were, she was not open with us about her relationship with him.
Okay. So your younger brother got to see him a couple times. You never met William Golson at all, even since your mother disappeared. You've never met him.
No, I have not.
Okay. And you described it as being a controlling relationship. When they met, was he working? Where was he living? Because my understanding is eventually he ended up living in your mother's house with her.
Correct. Yeah, and I know he had moved around a lot before getting into a relationship with my mom, and it does seem like pretty quickly he moved into her house.
Okay. All right, things moved fairly quickly. Maybe it's because she knew William's mother. Maybe it's because of some other reason. And once again, did he work? Did he have a job? What did he do for money?
I don't believe he had a job in Montana, and I could be mistaken, but my understanding is that my mom was supporting him. He's giving him money for anything and everything, including gambling.
That was his big thing, right? Gambling. I think you told me in our prior conversation he liked the slot machines and things.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And in fact, we're going to get to that, but they were seen in a casino not long before she disappeared, right? By some friends or something?
I believe that is the last time anybody that we were able to track down people seeing her alive.
Okay. So your mother, maybe, she still has this drinking issue, and then she has some legal issues starting maybe just a couple months before she disappeared. But all the while, the year before, she's been in this relationship with William Golson, who, once again, you haven't met him, but he doesn't sound like the greatest guy, being dependent on her. But I do also have to ask about this. Is it true that he was or is a sex offender?
It is.
Okay. Can you just, in general, being that this is a PG show, explain what the charges were, and do you think that your mother knew about this?
Um, my understanding of that case was that his daughter pressed charges against him for an incestual relationship.
Hmm.
I don't even want to call it a relationship, but
Right.
she was finally over the age of 18 and was in a good, solid, strong relationship, getting married, and wanted to press charges against him. And she did.
And did this
And
happen
I have to
in?
believe.
I'm sorry. Did this happen in 2005, 2004, long before your mother disappeared? Do you know the date of that in the timeline?
Unfortunately, I don't know the date of it. I mean, it had to have been 2004, and it might explain why my mom was so secretive about
Okay.
her relationship with him, because I had just had a baby girl.
Mhm.
And all I do know is that, he finally went to court to face the charges after my mom disappeared.
Right, and we will certainly talk about that. But once again, do you think that at some point, once again, they had a relationship starting in April 2004? Do you think at some point between April 2004 and April 2005 that she found out that there were these charges against him?
I, it's such a small town. I mean, there had to have been.
Okay.
She had to have known, I think.
Okay. But she never said anything specifically to you or your brother about them, like, well, I just found out William's being charged with having a relationship with his daughter. Nothing like that ever happened.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. So a lot going on in this relationship between Ellen and William, and he doesn't sound like a very good guy. What did you find out? Being once again that you weren't in Montana, but what if you found out about those days before the disappearance? And in fact, let's start here. You actually talked to your mother on April 12th, once again, just a few days before she disappeared. What was the content of that conversation? It actually worried you, didn't it?
It did. My mom was such a easygoing, like, even when she was sad or upset, like, she wore her emotions on her sleeve, but she was still just believed everything would work out the way it's supposed to. And this one day, she called me in an absolute panic. Almost not making sense, talking so fast and furiously about, I need money. Does your brother still owe you money? Do you still owe your brother money? I need, can you send me money? And it was so weird, and I was so put off by it that, it wasn't a bad conversation. It wasn't making any sense to me. I'm sure I was sleep deprived with my infant, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember, saying, like, I will see what I can find. I'll talk to my brother, like, what do you, like, how much money do you need? And she's just like, I need whatever you can send me. And I was like, okay.
I mean, you had
Calm down, Mom.
being that you knew your mother like you did. Of course, we're talking about her working and having investments, real estate. You had to be somewhat bothered by this. Of course, you didn't know about these charges against her either, and she never brought those up, did she?
Right.
Okay.
No.
All right. And
Yeah,
she
I mean,
never explained. Did she ever explain? Like, didn't you ever ask her? Do you not have any money in the on a bank account, or you know?
well, I mean, and because, I mean, that conversation was basically, her just
Mm-hmm.
venting, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word, just
Sure.
asking question after question, and me saying, no, like, Jake and I are even, like, what do you need? I just need money, and it was like I got off the phone and was just like, God, that was so weird. And I tried calling her back later and left her a message, and just because I did talk to my brother, and we couldn't figure out why she needed money. Last time we knew she had plenty. So but that's what started, the multiple phone calls from me to her every day, just checking on you, Mom. Like, I can pull some money out of savings, or let me borrow money from Dad. Like, just tell me how much you need and how to get it to you, kind of voicemails.
But so when you were calling her back, once again, this was a call we believe was on April 12th. So did you talk to her on April 13th or April 14th or April 15th or not?
I never talked to her again.
Never talked to her again. During this conversation on April 12th, did William's name ever come up? Like, she said something like, well, I need money to give the bill, or William is threatening me, or anything like that? Did that ever come up in the conversation?
No, it didn't.
Okay.
She wouldn't answer any question as to why or how much or why she needed it so badly.
Okay. But that, I mean, like you said, that call freaked you out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so let's move now forward. Once again, you tried to call her a couple times. She wasn't answering. But on April 14th or 15th, friends of your mother's, and maybe William's too, saw them. Where were they? What were they doing?
I believe they were probably at the bar together, where the friends always are. And that's the last that we know.
And once again, you didn't find out this about this until after she disappeared. Did you get to talk to these people personally, or did the cops talk to them? What was the situation there?
Sure. I didn't talk to them personally. I believe it was the local investigator who was able to kind of narrow down that time frame. I mean, fortunately, it is a small town. There's only so many bars and places that they frequented, so it was, I'm assuming, relatively easy to put that timeline into place.
Okay. All right, so let's go to April 16th, which we believe is a very important date for this disappearance. I know you hadn't talked to her since the 12th, but what is William Golson's statement regarding this day? What have you found out about this day? Of course, we don't know it to be true or not, but what have you been told about that day?
So April 16th is the day I finally got a call back from my mom's house number. Between the 12th and the 16th, I was calling her 8 to 10 times a day, probably both her cell phone, leaving voicemails until it wouldn't let me leave voicemails anymore, leaving multiple messages on her home answering machine, and finally I was like, Bill, if anybody is hearing this message, like, I need somebody to call me back. And he called me back, and he was very nonchalant, like, couldn't believe I was so upset and so worried about my mom. And he's like, we had a fight 4 days ago. She left. He's like, I figured she was on her way down to see you guys. And I was like, well, then she should be here by now. She's not here yet. Like, asking him, I'm not sure what exactly I asked him, but, trying, like, when's the last time you saw her? When is, and he's like, I saw her a couple of days ago, and we had a big fight, and she packed a bag and left.
And this is, of course, he's telling you this before you knew that they had been seen together, like the day before, 2 days before that. That's
right.
Okay. So he didn't seem worried at all. He didn't even ask if she got there. Nothing like that. He just seemed like, yeah, she took off. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. She took off. She told me to take care of the house, and that, I think that's what really set that something's wrong in my gut,
Yeah.
because my mom had worked so hard for that house. She had 2 yellow labs. Just like, she wouldn't do that.
Okay.
So
Had you ever talked to William Golson on the phone one-on-one before? Like I said, we know you never met him in person, but had you talked to him on the phone before?
no,
No. So that was, I'm going to say that's your one and only phone conversation ever with him on the phone? Forever?
my one and only conversation
Wow.
ever.
Okay. And once again, you said he was nonchalant, didn't seem too bothered by what was going on. And he said that your mother was headed your way. And we should explain, they're in Polson, Montana. You're in Colorado, so south of them.
Correct.
So what happens after that? When do you really start thinking, and maybe your brother too, that, something's up here?
So my brother's birthday was April 23rd, and after that conversation, I obviously called my brother, and he was getting ready to go on a trip for his birthday, and my mom knew about that trip. So we were kind of like, well, like, if she's not answering her phone and she's not with Bill, then we both just kind of knew if she didn't reach out to my brother on his birthday, then we really needed to be worried. We were already worried, but we were like, maybe she needed time to think. Maybe she's driving down to Colorado and she'll be here any day. We had that hope that she finally got away from this guy and was coming down to see us.
Mm-hmm. And once again, we have to remind the listeners, maybe once again, at this point, you don't know about any of those charges. And in fact, William Golson surely knew about those charges, but he never said something like, well, she was getting charged with this stuff and she took off. He did not say that on April 16th.
No, he didn't.
Okay. So April 23rd, your brother's birthday, that's when you get really, really concerned. And then after that, there was a graduation. What about the graduation? When do you think that was? And I think that was kind of like the final straw for you, wasn't it?
Right. Well, so April 23rd, when there was no communication from my mom, that is when I called the Polson Police Department and asked for a welfare check or to file missing person. I was like, I don't know what to do. I need to find my mom. I'm in Colorado. May 5th was my brother's college graduation, and that was the day she was supposed to arrive in Colorado. That had been our plan for months. She was going to arrive in Colorado for the graduation. And graduation came and went, and still no mom.
Mm-hmm. Did the police in that time go over to her house? Did they have an encounter with William Golson? Did they go knock on his door? What was going on there?
They did. After my phone call, they did go by the house, and obviously my mom wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the feedback that I got, was nothing seemed weird, nothing seemed out of place, but she wasn't there.
Okay. They'd tell you about any cars in the driveway, because her truck is going to play a part here very shortly. They didn't say about seeing any cars in the driveway. Didn't say if William Golson was home, or how about her dogs? Were the dogs there? Anything like that?
No, they didn't say anything about vehicles, and if Bill was there, I don't recall. And the dogs, the gentleman that my mom worked with, sometimes fixing docks, he had the dogs.
Oh, he had them.
It wasn't unusual for, if my mom was traveling or, working or doing something, this man would have the dogs. They kind of shared them. He was a older gentleman, and the dogs kept him company, and then my mom could take him so he could have a break from them.
Okay. All right, so we have the birthday on the April 23rd, May 5th, the graduation. She's not there, but at this point of May 5th, around there, no missing persons report had been filed yet, had it?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So when would you say that the investigation into your mother's disappearance really kicked in? When, what happened after May 5th that started it going? Would you say that it was when her truck was finally found, or would you say that it happened before then? Your best recollection.
Right. I really don't think anything started happening until my brother and I drove up to Montana to try to find answers.
Mm-hmm.
The local police, I mean, they had started looking at ATM surveillance, and there was some things that were happening, but it was very apparent to us they were treating this as a adult who decided to walk away from life, not an endangered adult.
Mm-hmm.
And, it really, when we found her truck, that was, they were like, well, see, yep, it's right, walking distance to the airport. We knew it all along, and if it weren't for my brother and I being there when they were processing the truck and insisting that there's no way that any of this makes sense, there's no way that our mother parked across a shopping center from an airport just disappearing.
No, but we should all. If I may, though, we should also make clear once again that at this point, you and your brother still didn't know about these charges against her. That was still not something you knew right at that second.
Yes, we did find out the end of April.
Okay, you finally did find at the end of April the charges against her.
Yes, so the conversations with the U.S. Marshal and her attorney all happened between April 23rd and May 5th.
All right.
No.
Okay, so you're looking for, and that's the question I was going to ask. So you're not the only people looking for her. There are other people, her attorney, like you said, U.S. Marshal Service, and then that's when you find out, hey, she's involved in this other thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you and Jake go up to Montana, try to figure out what's going on. While you're there, this truck is found. Her truck is found, and we're going to talk about that specifically in a moment. But you also find out about the U.S. Marshal. You find out about the attorney. I'm sure you're very shocked by that. But at what point was the missing persons report filed? Do you remember the date and anything like that?
I know my report was on April 23rd.
Okay.
But I'm not sure the legalities of when it went from I want to report, I think my mom is missing, I need a welfare check, to it actually being classified as missing persons with the police.
Okay. Okay. So you, what dates do you believe that you were up in Montana, and how long were you there?
We were there for about a week, the end of May, like the middle of the second to last week to the middle of the last week of May of 2005.
Okay. Now, being that you said you've never met William Golson in person, I guess that means that while you were up there, you never ran into him, even though you went over to your mother's house.
Right. He was not at the house any longer.
He was gone. Okay.
He had taken all of his belongings, and he was gone.
Okay, and we're going to certainly talk about that in a bit. But let's right now talk about your mother's truck. It was discovered, I guess coincidentally, while you were up there. Where was it? What city was it in? Where was it parked? Tell the listeners as much as you know about that.
Sure. So while we were there, we did get a phone call from the investigator that their request on her license plate that the truck had been located in Missoula, which is about 90 miles south of Polson. It's Missoula is also where the closest airport is. So the truck was found in a Barnes and Noble parking lot in one of those big shopping centers.
Mm-hmm.
And where the truck was parked, those big buildings, and they'll have like the drive that goes down in between the two different sections. And it was not so much a fire lane, but it's like where you park when you're just running into the store briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, we're looking at her being gone for over a month, and for it just to have been noticed in that spot where people are walking by it constantly.
So it was parked in a very conspicuous space. It wasn't in a regular parking space where people could go by it for days and really not pay attention to it. It's parked somewhere where people would obviously see it. So is it your impression it hadn't been there very long?
That's my belief, yes.
Okay. Was there any video that they were able to check, and was there anything strange about the vehicle once they got inside it, if they did?
To my knowledge, if there was any security footage outside of the Barnes & Noble, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
Inside her truck were her glasses that she needs for driving, and a duffel bag full of just random, like some summer stuff, some winter stuff, a shoe that didn't have its pair. It was very strange.
Mm-hmm. Was her phone found, a purse found, anything like that? Anything unusual about the vehicle? Was it dirty? Anything that stood out to you once you got to see it?
The only weird thing was just the way the bag was left, like on the front seat, and but there wasn't anything. They didn't find any recent receipts. They didn't find any. She didn't have a purse. She just carried a wallet, and that was in there with her driver's license. But no, it wasn't abnormally clean or abnormally dirty.
Mm-hmm.
They had moved the seat before we were able to. Obviously we're not going to jump in front of the police, but
yeah.
So it'd be too hard to tell if the seat she was a pretty tiny lady, so it'd be hard to tell if the seat had been moved for a taller person to drive it or not.
Okay. Did you say that her wallet was in the vehicle, or it wasn't? It was or wasn't?
I believe it was, because the police did recover her driver's license. They had her driver's license, and they took her passport from her house.
Okay.
When they processed that.
All right. Was her phone ever found?
No, it was not.
Okay. Her phone was never found. Do you know if the cell phone was ever pinged to determine its last location? Did you ever get any information regarding that, especially going back to April 16th?
If they did try that, I was not made aware of it.
Okay. So they never have told you, well, it bounced off this tower first up there in Polson, Montana, or that it bounced off some tower down in Missoula. No records of it being used. They may have the records, you just don't know what they are all these years later.
Right. Yes. If they did try pinging her cell phone, they did not let us know what they found or if they even did it.
Okay. And to your knowledge, all right. So we have this truck that was found. Would you call it walking distance from the Barnes and Noble to the airport? Could somebody walk that?
You'd have to cross a major highway, but yes, it is definitely walking distance.
Okay. So we found the truck. Where did the truck end up? Did you get it? Did your brother get it? Did it get repossessed? What ended up happening to the truck?
They let us pick it up and drive it home.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so they didn't check it for prints or anything like that. It was just like, oh, here's a truck, you can take it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely felt like, well, yep, she ran, here's her truck, get it out of here so we don't have to ticket it. Like that's really what it felt like.
Okay. Did the police in Missoula know that the owner of this truck was missing from Polson when they were saying that? Do you know?
I don't know. I just know that they had put out the report that they were looking for that vehicle with that license plate.
Okay. And in fact, we're not going to go too deep into this, but your attitude, I mean, your viewpoint of how the police have handled this, their performance has been a little lackluster. Didn't seem like they had the heart in it.
That's a good way to say it. I mean, I get it. It's a tough case. There's not a lot to go off of, but I do feel like more could have been done.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to pick out anybody specifically, but you even had
Nope.
somebody who said something that, really disheartened you. Let's just put it that way. Somebody in the police department.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just leave it
Yeah.
at that. We'll just leave it at that. And I'm sure Polson, Montana, probably doesn't have too many missing people, so they don't have a lot of experience in that area anyway. Let's go back to William Golson. You had mentioned that when you went up there at the end of May, when the truck was found, that you did not see him. Why didn't you see him?
He was running.
So not only, once again, just to maybe explain this, your mother disappears on April 16th, but sometime between April 16th and when you went up there at the end of May, are you saying that he disappeared too?
He did, yes.
Okay. Do you believe that he disappeared before the truck was found? Or, of course, we have suspicions regarding
I do.
that. But, okay.
Yeah, I do.
When did you find that out that he was missing as well?
While we were up there.
Okay, so would you say that you found out because the police were looking for him, or did somebody actually file a missing persons report on him? Do you know?
No, I mean, the police had said that they were trying to question him some more, but that they could no longer find him. And we had requested his eviction from our mother's house, so it was kind of like, it's your fault we can't find him.
Yeah.
But
That's
so no,
a funny way to
he
think
was right. So he was not there while we were there.
When you found that out, I'm guessing that made you very suspicious as well. Even though it might not have piqued the police's curiosity, it certainly piqued yours.
That he was opening up credit card accounts in both my mother's name and my brother's name. And he also ordered a new computer, laptop that would be easy to travel with. But it was delivered after he disappeared as well.
So he ordered it and didn't even stick around to receive it?
No, he didn't.
Okay. Do you have any idea how much was he able to get any money by opening these accounts? I mean, being that he disappeared, was this like enough money to travel on? What was the extent of this?
I believe it was a smaller amount, a couple thousand. I mean, it wasn't a lot, enough to live off of indefinitely for sure. It was some cash to travel with.
How did you find out about the police found out about this, or did you personally find out about this? Like, did your brother get maybe something in the mail or something letting them know that he had opened an account? How did you find that out? Do you remember?
I recall the police telling us that they had actually pulled the footage of him using credit cards at ATMs in town, and then the credit card bills were coming to the house. And I had taken over, I had all my mom's mail forwarded to me. So I got the bill. But once those cash advances, there was no other charges on them.
Okay. Did the police at this point, while you were talking to them, now that they know that your mother has disappeared and that William Golson has disappeared, did they ever offer up a theory as to why they were both gone?
Not to me, no. I'm sure they had a theory, but...
Maybe I just need to ask you this specifically. Were the police back in 2005, and maybe even to this day, are they still under the belief that your mother fled, and maybe thinking back at the time that William Golson fled to meet with her, to be with her?
I mean, I think that is a plausible theory. When you're not looking at the personal side of it, you know. I don't fault the police for having that theory, but all the other evidence about my mom and who she was and what was important to her makes that a false theory.
Of course.
So, yeah.
Okay. But being that there was the belief out there that she fled because of these charges, that, now that he was gone, I guess you couldn't, the police might be able to put it all together that logically, rationally, maybe he went to meet her wherever she was. Of course, we don't believe that for a variety of reasons, but the police, you've kind of led me on to believe that maybe that's the theory they were trying to push. Now we also have to remember that Golson had some charges against him. His daughter had these sex charges brought against him. I'm guessing that were these charges filed in Polson, or were they filed somewhere else?
I want to say not in Polson. It was either in Missoula or in Washington State. I know the daughter lived in Washington, but he served his time in Montana. So
okay. So were there other people, looking for him for those reasons too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe that because his daughter's case was an active investigation and he had been charged. So
okay. So that might have given him a good reason to run, but more than anything else. But he was found. Now, we should know, though, that although your mother has not been found, William Golson was found. And I know you know a little bit about that. Why don't you explain to the listeners how that all happened, when it happened?
Sure. So he was found, and we were notified by the Polson Police Department once he was back in custody in Montana. But he was found in Tennessee totally by happen chance. He walked out of his hotel room at the wrong time when the police were knocking on somebody else's door. So fortunately, those police officers thought something was off and ran his ID and found the warrant for him out of Montana.
So he's found in Tennessee. Do you have any idea how long he had been there? Once again, I know his case isn't the only reason you're concerned about him is because of your mother's disappearance. But did you ever find out how long he had been living there? What he had been doing there? Does it seem like he might have gone there directly after your mother disappeared? I know anything about that?
Unfortunately, I don't know anything about how long he was there. I'd always just figured that he had been hitchhiking his way, as far away from Montana as he could get. And so who knows where he was in the meantime.
Okay. Now, the funny thing, though, is he never changed his name, did he? He ran, but he was
No.
still William Golson.
Yes, he was.
Okay. So they found him, they brought him back to Montana to answer for these charges. There's some good things about that, and there are some bad things about that. Why don't you explain both of them?
Well, the good thing is that he was charged and imprisoned, and I really hope his daughter found the piece that she needed from that. And the bad news is that all the evidence that we had linking him to my mother's disappearance was dropped in a plea bargain.
And that evidence would have been what?
I believe it was the footage or the security camera footage for the cash withdrawals, and then just the paper trail that we had for him opening up those fraudulent accounts.
So are we to believe then that he can never be charged on those things ever again? I mean, that was part of the plea deal, that those things go away? Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding of it, yeah.
Okay, so as part of a plea deal, I don't know why they would do that. Seems like maybe they didn't think they had a strong enough case against him. But those charges, once again, the money charges, the fraudulent bank charges, and all that were dropped. How long did he serve? And he's out now, isn't he?
He is.
Wow.
Yes, I believe he served 12 years.
12 years?
10 or 12.
Okay. So he was in there for a long time. But I guess what you're saying is he just got out recently.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Have you ever had a chance to talk to his daughter, the one who brought the charges against him?
I haven't ever talked to her. I have emailed a couple times with her mom.
Yeah. And have you talked about, if you can say, have you talked about your mother, Ellen? If you can say.
Yeah, no, we didn't talk specifically about my mom.
Okay. All right. All right, so we have this disappearance. We have her boyfriend who disappeared. He's caught in Tennessee a couple years later, comes back, answers those charges, spends time in jail, but now he's out. But your mother is still missing. Do you think that there's any chance in the near future, now that he is out, that the police are going to question him again? And when was the last time you had any interaction with the Polson Police Department?
I have not had any interaction with Polson Police Department since that visit, other than a few phone calls over the next couple years, 2005 to maybe 2008. My brother had a few more interactions, and I know he went in to see them when the courts did finally issue a death certificate for her. But I don't believe that he'll ever be questioned about anything regarding my mother's disappearance.
What do you think the attitude is of the Polson Police Department in regards to your mother's disappearance? Once again, I know you haven't had a lot of interaction with them, but do you believe that they think that William Golson did something to her, or do you think that they still hold the idea that they had back in 2005 that she probably ran off?
I think now that it's been 13 years, I think they believe that something did happen. I don't think they think she ran for this long, but at the same time, it's a hard case. There's very little evidence of anything. But I think missed in those early days that may have some better clues.
Things were missed. They never went into the house. They never tried to see if there was any signs of violence in the house, anything like that. It is usually done on what we would call just outright, quote unquote, murder cases where there's a body or something. The police didn't do anything like that.
Right.
Okay. Now, when this happened back in 2005, as you've told the listeners, you were a new mother at the time. And these last 13 years, I'm sure have not been easy.
No, it's not. There's never a good time to lose your parent, but especially trying to figure out motherhood, and it's been hard. I miss her every day.
Do you and your brother Jake talk about her a lot? I mean, how has he handled this over the last 13 years? Especially considering that I'm guessing in those teenage years when your parents were divorced, he got to see her a little bit more than you did.
Right. He definitely had a very angry reaction. He felt like he should have done more. He holds a lot of blame that he wasn't able to save her. And, I think that's just where we're at with it. I mean, it's not having closure is one thing, but to know that she was definitely suffering through the last part of her life is a devastating way to remember your mother. And both of her parents are gone now, and they died without having any answers. And it's wrecked that side of the family in a certain way, losing her. And the ripple effect of something like this goes on for generations. My daughters still talk about Grammy L and how much they wish they could have known her. My youngest is a spitting image, and they will never know the kind of love that she had for them even before they were born.
Yeah, these disappearances, I've done 90 of them now, that they do, that's a good way to put it. They do have a ripple effect. That, even disappearances that happened 40 years ago, they still have an effect today in 2018. People who weren't even born at the time that the disappearance happened, these days, they still feel it. That is true. I think that's an excellent way to put that, Brianne. Do you have a Facebook page or anything like that set up for your mother where we can point listeners to?
I don't. I have my personal page, and we had done some missing persons things before, but with things going so cold and quiet so fast, it was too hard to maintain for me personally. So
Okay. All right. That's fine. Any final words before we complete this interview, Brianne?
Well, I truly hope that I do feel like there's somebody out there that knows something, that heard something. I mean, I still live in a small town. I know how it works. And, all we truly want at this point is to be able to put our hearts at rest, and if possible, put our mom to rest and be able to honor her the way that she deserves. And, the anger is gone, the fear is gone. We miss our mom, and any kind of answer would bring so much peace and just a lightening of our hearts that, I truly am hopeful that someday we'll get some kind of answer.
And I hope that Unfound can make that happen. There's no doubt this is a tough case. No doubt.
Yeah.
This is one of many tough cases that Unfound has covered in the last year and a half. I know that you and I will continue to keep in contact with each other. I know the listeners, of course, once this is up on the internet, that it's not going away ever. So a lot of people are going to probably find out about your mother's disappearance that don't know about it right now. And I'm hoping some of the listeners have some opinions, maybe people up there in Montana that can help in some way, and maybe know a little bit more. Maybe somebody knows William Golson and can come forward, and let's try to get those the police department up there working a little harder than it seems they have been. That's always something that's good that can be done. But we'll try to do all that, for you. Brianne, I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Brianne Edwards, daughter of Ellen Sloan. I thank her for joining me and all of you on the program. We fought through some cell phone issues during the interview, and I appreciate Brianne being patient as we tried to get the best reception. I think there's going to be a segment of the audience that will scoff at the idea that a person would run away from the situation Ellen was in. Instead, they will focus their attention on William Golson, and I want you to know that attitude makes perfect sense. However, before you go too far down that path, I urge you to check all of the stories of people, both famous and not, who have fled countries due to tax problems. And if they'd return to their home countries, they'd be thrown in jail. It's quite a few, if not the millions, since, say, the beginning of the 20th century. This is the reason I tend to give the police a break back in 2005. I'm not sure how much they really knew about William Golson at the time. Brianne never met him. Jake only met him a few times. And who knows if the police even knew that Golson was charged with sex crimes while they investigated Ellen's disappearance. So once again at the time, no reason to necessarily suspect Golson, despite him also being missing. But now with the passing of time, and I have to tell you, after almost 2 years of doing Unfound, it's amazing what the passing of time can show about unsolved missing persons cases. I think the disappearance and the tax troubles can be separated. In fact, they are only tangentially linked by one obvious fact, that William Golson needed Ellen Sloan for her money. Once the money dried up, due to the tax problems, that Ellen's relationship with Golson became dangerous. Like I said, though, at the time in 2005, I can understand why the police might have had a hard time seeing it, especially due to some of the things Brianne told me about the police's attitude in this case. So I think Ellen's fear of going to jail was real, but I think at the end, especially with the call to Brianne, I think Ellen's fear of Golson was bigger. And he should be seen as the one and only reason that Ellen Sloan isn't with us in 2018. With that, I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a great review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Dentzel, and you've been listening to Unfound.